Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to our Strategic People Management Program. We're now on Module 4, which is Job Design. So just a recap of our discussion previously on the previous modules. We have already gone through strategy and how we are supposed to attach our HR programs on a strategy. We began module 3 with organizational design, and so now we proceed with job design. So when we talk about job design, it's all about figuring out how will this particular job be able to contribute to that strategy. So when we speak about job designs, this is about how jobs should be designed in order to facilitate the achievement of deliverables. So it is undertaken to increase the probability that whoever will take on the position will be able to apply their competency to the fullest. So keywords here are the words deliverable and what would it take for this person performing this job in order to perform to their fullest in order to achieve these deliverables. So now when we do job design, there are a few things that we need to consider. Okay? First, there's the content of the job. Second, how it will be performed. Third, where it will be done. And fourth, what are the competencies required to perform it effectively. So let's go to each of these. And when we design a particular work or a job, there are several levers or adjustable levers that we use. We call it adjustable levers because we could, modify these particular areas or factors in the job design to suit the type of job and the necessary competency that is required for that job to be performed. Okay. So what are these adjustable levers? First, we have responsibility for the job. Second, we have task identity. Third, autonomy. Next, variety. Then participation in decision. Next is feedback. Then recognition and support. And then we have work environment, and finally, the job title. Okay. Now, perhaps you're wondering, ano ba itong job design na ito? Hindi ba ito rin yung job description? Okay. Magkaiba po ibahin natin yung job description sa job design. Okay. When we talk about job description, often we're too focused on, kailangan may job description ako. Okay? O nasaan na yung job description nitong taong to? Kailangan natin yan para makapagtrabaho siya. Okay? The job description is important because it outlines for the person performing the job kung ano yung mga eksaktong gagawin niya, no? Step by step. Okay? And this is part of the job design. Okay? So the job description is actually part of the job design. Okay? Now, when we talk about the job design, isipin nyo na lang muna, ano ba yung kailangan ma-accomplish nitong taong to? Okay? Ano yung kailangan niyang magawa? Ano yung kailangan niyang ma-deliver o maibigay sa atin o sa anumang parte ng organisasyon, no? Kung saan yung magagamit ng taong yan o yung mga makakatanggap ng deliverables niya, yung ginawa niya para mag-contribute dun sa strategy implementation ng organization. Okay? So, job design is actually telling us what exactly will this job perform, what will it accomplish, and how it will be accomplished. And what kind of talent would we need in order to accomplish that job. Okay? So, hindi lang siguro natin, wala naman masyadong pinagkaiba sa job description. Okay? So, again, when we talk about job design, part of it is describing what this job will perform. But more than that, we're trying to figure out how this job will be able to contribute to the strategic implementation. Okay? So, let's talk about responsibility for the job. So, when creating a job design, we first begin with this part. Okay? So, ito yung isa sa mga pinaka-importanteng dapat nating i-identify muna. Okay? This could also be what we call job objectives. Okay? Ano ba yung objective ng trabahong to? Okay? Actually, it begins there, no? Ano ba yung objective ng trabahong to? And what are the responsibilities that come with the work, okay, or with the job? So when we talk about responsibility for the job, the employee should understand the significance of the work and where it fits into the purpose of the organization. Next, their work should be clearly identified so they can see that they are personally responsible for the success and failures that occur as a result of their own actions. Okay? So, when we talk about job responsibilities and incorporating these in the design, we're talking about how are we going to make this person understand what is the importance of this job. Okay? What is the importance of the task that I am about to perform and how it contributes to the accomplishment of goals. Okay, so in order to make a person effective at work, they have to really first understand what are the responsibilities that they have. Okay, perhaps we could cite an example. What are the types of responsibilities? For example, for a cook. Okay, I'll just use a simple example. Let's say it's a cook. What is the responsibility of a cook? Okay, so a person preparing the meals, ang responsibility niya is to be able to prepare a satisfying meal for a client. Okay, so yun yung responsibility niya. So I cook in order to provide a satisfying meal to the client or to whoever is about to eat that meal. Okay, so that's my responsibility. So my responsibility is to cook a satisfying meal. Okay, now what's the difference between responsibility and accountability? Okay, often the people sometimes mix that up. Okay, so let's just clarify that. So when you begin writing responsibilities, you can differentiate that from what the person is accountable for. Okay, when we talk about accountability, we're referring more about the results of what he did. Okay, so for example, my responsibility is to provide you satisfying meals. Okay, so that meal expected to, of course, satisfy the person, make him satisfy the hunger of a person, no? Mabusog sila, masayahan sila sa kanilang kinain. Okay. Now, what if that person gets sick, no? O na food poison? Okay. So doon papasok yung accountability natin, no? Naging resulta, imbes na naging satisfied sila sa meal, naging siguro na sumama ang tiyan, nagkasakit, nagsuka, nahilo, probably because we serve something na panis na o hindi na suitable for eating. Okay? Or kaya meron tayong na-mix na ingredients na hindi dapat na-mix. Okay? So, because of that result, no? Ito yung resulta ng ginawa natin, then nagkaroon ng problema, then we become accountable to that result Okay? Tayo yung accountable doon because we were the one responsible in preparing a safe and healthy meal for them. Okay? Pero the result was not good. So, hindi maganda yung nangyari. So, ako yung accountable doon. Okay? It's also the same if the results were good. Of course, you're the one accountable for that. Okay? No, yung naging resulta ay naging maayos. Of course, that also is attributable to you. No? So you're accountable for that result. Okay? So I hope you got it. No, when we talk about responsibility, it's more about the things that we are supposed to do or supposed to accomplish. And accountability stems or emanates from the results of that particular work that we have performed. Okay, so another example will probably be in the accounting department. The people in the accounting department are responsible to produce financial reports on time. Okay, so if the financial reports are not produced on time, then they become accountable to whatever effects of that delay in the production of the financial report. So if there was a decision that was not made, then they are accountable for that, okay? Or if there was a decision wrongly made because of wrong financial information, then the person preparing that will be accountable for that, okay? So when we define the job responsibility, we're actually identifying what that person is supposed to accomplish. Okay, so what are they expected to accomplish? Okay, so that's the first part. Okay, of defining of completing our job design. Next would be to identify the different tasks involved in a particular job. Okay, so people receive more satisfaction from doing a whole piece of work, and it means that they see the end results of the work they have produced either on their own as part of a team, and it's likely to happen when the job has a distinct beginning and end, which is clearly visible to the job holder and others. Okay. When we talk about task identity, it's not just about um, enumerating what are the different tasks that are to be performed. Okay, so we have to define the process that this person has to undergo, and from this process, identify what are the tasks and subtasks. Okay, so it's actually you can actually um, um, put a lot of detail into these tasks. No, so what is important is that you in identifying these tasks, in writing task identity, we'll be able to show the person the entirety of what they are supposed to do. Okay, so it's not just about uh, uh, just one particular role. You have to enumerate the process, or we have to identify the process and to outline the different tasks involved in those processes. Okay. Now, this is also important later. No, when we go to recruitment, when we go to performance evaluation, when we go to training design, all of these things that actually we're discussing here in the job design will come into play also. No? So, pero most importantly, yung task. Okay? So when we identify the task, we'll be able to later relate it to the kind of skill, the kind of preparation that we will need, the kind of evaluation that we will make based on these tasks that are being performed. Okay, so it's also important that these tasks are clearly defined. Okay, I'd give an example. For example, again, the cook. Okay, So what's the task of a person with a position of cook or chef or someone in the kitchen helper? Okay, it's not just about writing down, oh, what's the task of the cook? The task is to cook. Okay, pero that task is, well, it's actually made up of a lot of other tasks. Okay, cooking is made up of a lot of other tasks. So you have to outline that. Okay, so you have to go through the process. Okay, what ano yung process niyan? So you start with, before the person can even start um, frying something. Of course, that has to go through a process before that. They have to prepare the ingredients. Okay, so in some tasks there, yeah, there's slicing, there's grinding, there's mixing. Okay, so those are the sub tasks that you have to do in cooking. Okay, cooking is a task, or even oh yeah, it's a task, and then you have sub tasks: slicing, grinding, mixing, uh, rolling, frying. Okay, so these are the details of that particular task. Okay, so you have sub tasks then. Okay, so the more detailed that you will be able to identify them, the better, because you will be able to more accurately pinpoint the kind of competencies later that are needed to perform that particular task. You will be able to easily evaluate the performance of the person, because you're able to go through each of these tasks, no? And you'll be able to identify what kind of interventions you might need later if the performance is not at par to expectations. Then you'll be able to identify which particular task was not performed well, where they would need training, where they would need interventions. Okay, so that's why task identification is important. Next in the job design is autonomy. So what do we mean by autonomy? Autonomy means giving more scope to people to regulate and control their own work. The job holder ought to have some areas of decision making that they can call their own within the framework of the job, and how much discretion do workers have about methods of working. So in this particular part of the design, we're actually trying to determine what decisions are to be made by this particular work, by this particular job. Okay. So if you sometimes we we might not be able to identify everything. Okay. However, it is also important we identify the major decisions that a particular job is supposed to make. Okay, so for example, an emergency room personnel. Okay, so what type of decisions are they allowed to make, um, and what decisions are they not allowed to make? Okay, so that it would be clear, no, kung ano yung if I'm allowed to make this decision, then I can easily make a decision. And if you identified that area where they can make that decision, they will be easily, or it will be easily applied when they begin working. Okay, or even if yung mga decisions na hindi nila pwedeng gawin. Okay, so sa emergency, for example, in an emergency personnel, are they allowed to decide whether to administer this particular procedure or not? Okay, so pag dun sa kanyang job design, you're not supposed to administer that. Okay, who is supposed to decide on that? Then you could move it forward to that particular job or that particular person. Okay. However, if you are able to identify, or pag ganito yung mga cases, then you are allowed to make a decision. Okay. So there is it makes work easier for that particular job, because they know, oh, okay, I'm supposed to make a decision here. Okay. So I can move easily, and I have some autonomy in this particular level. Okay. Now, some jobs are also given. For example, if if you are a manager, okay, what are the things that you can decide on? Like for example, if you're going to approve something, okay, so what is it that you are supposed to approve? Okay, you can approve uh, amounts that are below 10,000 pesos. Okay, so you have autonomy there. If it's below 10,000 pesos, you can approve it based on your discretion. But it's about above that amount, then you'll have to refer to your supervisor. Okay, so that is what autonomy means. Now, next we have variety. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, variety refers to different challenging tasks within a job. And people find that doing the same repetitive task, offering no challenge, causes them to lose interest, become bored, and dissatisfied. Okay? So greater variety can improve the interest, challenge, and commitment to the task. And the optimum amount of variety will differ from person to person and could depend on the level of the position. Okay, so variety simply means that um, we identify as well what are the other things that this particular person in this position can also perform other than the regular tasks that they have been tasked to do. No? So what else can they do in a particular organization? What else are they allowed to do from time to time? Okay, so it's also important to identify those things so that when we design a job, hindi lang puro ito lang yung gagawin ko, very monotonous yung trabaho ko. Day in, day out, paulit-ulit na lang, ito na lang yung ginagawa ko. Okay? So from time to time, they may be allowed to, okay, pwede in this, for this particular job, from time to time, you may be allowed to go to another institution, perform this particular task there. So for example, if you are into, for example, you're the person in the fundraising, okay? However, from time to time, when needs comes, when we need volunteers to go to a particular community, you may be tapped, okay, to do volunteer work for that particular event. Okay, so that's an example of inserting variety into the job design. Okay. Next, we have participation in decisions. Okay, so it's most people want to take part in decision making about matters that affect their work. They also have much to contribute. Okay, people are also far more likely to act on decisions that they have had a part in making. And unless people can participate in a genuine and meaningful way about matters that affect the work, they are unlikely to be satisfied and do more than the required minimum. Okay. So the job design should also incorporate areas wherein they can be tapped or they can participate in the decision-making process. Okay, so perhaps one way of doing this is to first identify the decision-making process of the organization. So what are these processes that require decision-making of teams, of departments or groups? Okay, and then define the role of each position there. When and how can they participate in this decision making? Okay, so an example here would be the annual budget planning. Okay, so everyone has to be able to participate in this particular exercise. So the budget planning, what will they do? What will they contribute to that planning? Okay, so the reason why, like what was said earlier, is that people who are able to participate in this process and processes would have a deeper sense of ownership to what they do. Okay, so it's also important that if it's as much as possible, we also incorporate or insert areas wherein they can participate. Okay. Now, I'll just give an example for this one. Let's just use a manager, for example, a supervisor. Okay, so a supervisor may be assigned to a particular committee. Okay, so you supervisor, you will also be part of this committee. So, for example, a grievance committee. Okay, so every feedback, every issues and problems in the organization, you will be here. You will be asked to join this committee to help in the decision making process. Okay, so that's an example. Okay, the other example is probably a manager can be asked or tasked to be part of a management committee wherein issues and matters of this concern, or not just in your department but on across several departments, you will be able to participate and provide your contribute to the discussion and make and together make those decisions that would affect the various departments. Okay, so that's one way of um, getting the participation of certain positions in the decision making process. Next, we have feedback. Okay, so feedback, everyone needs information of some kind about how they are doing, about what they have achieved. Otherwise, there is no way of getting any real satisfaction from performing effectively. So performance feedback helps the job holder to learn on the job and keep on learning. So how soon can a job holder get feedback about their work? How often and from whom? So when we talk about feedback, we're talking more about how a particular job is evaluated or appraised. Okay, so part of that job design is how this particular job will be appraised, so that the person performing the job knows what will happen, no? Or how he will be evaluated on his performance. Okay, and not just evaluated, how he's going to receive feedback from that particular evaluation. So in order to improve performance, okay, so that is also incorporated in the job design. Okay. Next, we have support and recognition. So it's also important to identify how this particular job or uh, the the different jobs that we have in the organization, how will they be recognized, and what are the types of perhaps support and incentives that can be provided uh, for this particular position. These things can actually be identified in advance, okay? But of course, not everything would be identified in advance. But however, um, we can already design a particular job to receive a particular recognition or support or an incentive for a good performance. So that could already be incorporated in the job design. Then finally, we have the work environment. So the work environment simply speaks about how a job should provide a safe and healthy working environment that is free from discrimination and harassment. So um, this is simply how we what kind of work environment we will provide a particular position or job. Okay. Now, it also identifies what in advance what kind of work environment will this person be working in. Okay. So, for example, those who are working from home. Okay. So, if this particular job is designed in such a way that the person performing this task can telecommute or can perform this task anywhere they want. Okay. So we have to incorporate in the design what kind of work environment should they be working in. So to be able to perform their work better. Okay. So we can come up with certain rules or certain guidelines on the work environment as well. Okay. For example, if you this, for example, this job is can actually be performed at home However, if you're going to perform it at home, the following should be observed. Okay, so you might want to incorporate that in the job design. Okay, lalo ngayon, uh, lahat halos marami yung nag-work from home, online, and then bigla-bigla na lang in the background, marinig mo may aso, o kaya may tatawid dun sa likod mo, no? So, especially if you're meeting with, with directors or meeting with funders, no? So, the work environment is also important to define, no? What kind of work environment that the person has to be in. If you are working the field, it's also important that if a particular job is about to work, includes work in the field, then that too has to be incorporated in the design. So if your this particular job has to perform certain field work from time to time, what conditions will that particular person doing this work encounter in the field? Okay, and what kind of precautions would this person need to have, or to what kind of what are the things that this person will need in order to be able to work in that particular environment. Okay. Finally, we have job titles. Okay. Job titles are very important. Okay. It really defines what that person would feel in doing work. Okay. Minsan kasi may mga tao na, importante din yung title, no? So, kailangan din maayos yung titulo ng trabaho na ibinibigay natin sa tao. Okay? Hindi lang maayos, dapat tama. Okay? Kasi minsan, baka mali din yung maging impression about a job title. Okay? So, it should identify the position in a way which is clear and recognizable. So, parang walang duda na kapag tinawag kang accountant, then you're expected to do accounting. No? Okay? You're expected to produce financial reports. Okay? So it should indicate the function of that position. Okay? So you are a marketing officer. Okay? So if you're a marketing officer, then what you're actually doing is marketing. Ikaw yung attract ng mga kliyente. Okay? And it should reflect the level of the position in the organization structure. Okay? So what we mean by that is dapat when we assign a job title, malinaw din na ito yung position niya, ito yung level niya dun sa organization. Na mali-distinguish mo, pagka sinabing supervisor, mas mataas siya dun sa assistant. Okay? So, yung ingatan lang natin dito is maglagay tayo ng position title. Like for example, administrative supervisor. Okay? So, supervisor, no? Pero wala naman pala siyang sinusupervise, no, na tao. Okay? Siya lang mag-isa dun sa trabaho yon. So, I mean, the ambiguous na kala ko supervisor ako. Then it also creates bad feelings then. No? Or probably it might also make the person feel, supervisor pala ako. No? Medyo lumabang na ako dahil supervisor ako. Yung pala, ikaw ay isang utusan lang din. No? Na ikaw yung inuutusan doon. Pero supervisor ang title mo. Okay? So, i-klaro na natin, isipin natin kung ano yung nararapat na titulo na ilalagay doon. Okay? And sometimes title also gives prestige to that particular task or particular work na natin. Okay? So, tawagin kang Chief Executive Officer. No? You're the chief, you're the boss. No? So, pagka sinabing may mga titles like for example, janitor. No? Medyo parang may mga tao makagad isipin na napakababa ng position mo, janitor. Okay? So gawin natin floor manager. Okay? Uh, iba na yung pagkakahulugan, no? So yan natin, no? Piliin din natin yung angkop na pangalan, yung hindi over, hindi masamang pakinggan, no? Maayos pakinggan, okay? Pero angkop doon sa ginagawang trabaho. Okay? So now, there's a process that we follow in doing a job design. Okay? So, what is this process? Okay, first we identify who are the clients and what are their needs. Okay? For this particular position, who is the client and what are those things that are expected from him by the client? Okay? It can be external clients, it can be internal. Okay? For example, the accounting manager. Who is the client of the accounting manager? Whoever uses the outputs of the accounting manager. Like, for example, the financial reports. Who uses the financial reports? Top management, the president, the board. Okay? So therefore, the client of an accounting manager is the CEO or the board. Okay? So if you are a let's say if you are in a position of purchasing clerk, okay, so who are the clients of a purchasing clerk? Okay, so it could be normally in our institution that would be internal, no? That would be external, no? So internal, because you're purchasing for someone inside the organization. They expect you to purchase the right product at the right time, the right quantity, the right quality. And you're supposed to provide that need. Okay, so you when you identify who are the clients are and what they need, then you'll be able to define more clearly what would be the deliverable for that particular position. Okay, so once you've define the deliverables. When we talk about deliverables, ito yung binibigay ko, no? It can be a service, it can be a tangible item, like for example, a report, a financial report. Okay, so what are the things that your position is supposed to deliver or to accomplish? Okay, so once you have identified these two, no? So the client who will define the quality of the deliverable and the deliverable itself, then you will be able to identify what would be the task that needs to be done. Okay. Now, before that, identifying the task, of course, you will have to identify the process on how to produce these deliverables. So if you have identified that process on how to produce these deliverables at the quality that is defined by the client, then you will be able to identify the appropriate task to be done. Okay. Then it's also important. Part of the process is to answer why do we need these particular tasks done. Okay. Bakit importanteng gawin itong mga tasks na ito? Mahalagang sagutin din yung tanong na yan kasi para lang alam din natin o maintindihan nung gagawa ng trabahong yan kung gaano kahalaga yung particular task na yun. Okay? Na kapag hindi ito nagawa, then there is an implication on the deliverables and on the results that is expected from that particular position. Okay? So next, we have to identify how will the task be done. So again, process, you go through the process again. What will be the impact? Okay, so what impact will there be on other positions in the organization? Anong ibig sabihin yan? Kapag hindi nagawa yung task na ito, anong magiging impact nito dun sa ibang organization o ibang department? Okay? So kung di ako napagpasa ng report, ano magiging epekto nito dun sa ibang departamento. Kung hindi ko nagawa o nagawa yung payroll summary, ano magiging epekto nito? O ano yung magiging impact nito? Okay? Who will the position report to? Kanino ko sasabihin yung mga ginawa ko? And who will be reporting to that position? Okay? Yung upward and downward. No? So, sino yung sasabihan ko, pagpapaalaman ko, at sino yung mga nagpapaalam sa akin. Okay? And where will the work be done? Physical location. Saan mo gagawin yan? Okay, so these are the suggested process that we need to follow in doing a job design. Okay? Now, we go to the case assignment. In this assignment, we're supposed to identify a particular position. Okay, so to make it, since we cannot identify the job design, or we cannot make the job design for all of the positions in the organization for this session, just for the purpose of exercise, kindly identify one particular one critical role within the organization, okay, and then try to make the job design for this critical role, okay. Now, you just only need to pick one particular role or job, okay. Like for example, nurse. So, what's the job design for a nurse? For an X-ray technician, for a laboratory technician, for a manager supervisor, for a care assistant. Okay, so identify one. And I guess if you go back to the memo that we issued, we identified already particular position per institution. Okay, so please refer to that memo. What particular position you are supposed to perform a job design. However, if you feel that you'd like to do another one or use a different position or use a different role, you've identified another critical role that you'd like to give priority to, then please do so. You may do that as well. Okay. So this will be the assignment. You have to identify a critical role and do the job design for that one. Type it down and then post it in our Google Drive folder. Okay, if you go to the Google Drive that we have shared with you, you'll find a folder there, module 4. And under module 4, there is a folder there for assignments. Okay, so kindly save your work in that folder so that we can check it out. Okay, so that come July 2, I think, we'll be discussing first the organizational structure, second the job design, and then third the competency. Okay, so it's important first you do this job design for that particular position, because the next module we will be discussing competencies. So competency model. You'll be doing the competency model for the same position that you have that you are going to use in this exercise. Okay, so thank you very much for your patience and for listening to our module 4. Okay, so see you on module 5.